So today I'll be upgrading a Lenovo ThinkStation S30, fairly big, chunky workstation that has some really good hardware inside. I got a few of these at a good price, and I'm looking forward to upgrading a bunch of them. This one in particular has an Intel Xeon E5-1620 CPU at 3.6 gigahertz, and that's a 4-core, 8-thread Xeon CPU that does rival a lot of generations of Intel i7s. It came shipped with 16 gigabytes of DDR3, 1600 megahertz RAM, so I probably won't upgrade that. Maybe just for fun, because this does have 8 DIMM slots, so maybe I'll upgrade it to 32 gigs, but at 16 is usually enough. I've also got 2 SSDs to install. One's a 128 gigabyte Samsung solid state drive. That'll be the Windows 10 boot drive, or maybe Windows 11. And this is a 256 gigabyte Toshiba solid state drive. And I might throw an extra hard drive in here as well. There's so many different things you could do with these. But I'm going to turn it into a budget gaming system. So I also have this EVGA modeled GeForce GTX 970 4GB GDDR5 graphics card. And to install that, we do need a couple cable adapters, which I'll talk about when we get to putting the card in. But this unit does come with a 600 watt power supply, so you're covered there. You don't have to swap that out. So let's take a look inside this tower. Alright, so here's a look inside the case. Immediately what I noticed was the orientation of the CPU fan and heatsink, which is blowing warm air down instead of the usual out towards the exhaust. It struck me as odd, but you know what, I didn't design this thing. There might be some kind of rationale. I'd love to hear it. Unfortunately, I'll probably never meet the person who designed this case, but that's alright. So I might I'm going to try to, I might flip this around. We'll see if we can orientate it in a different way. We'll do some thermal tests later on to see how it affects performance, but so maybe it's no big deal. As you can see here, there's little fans and shrouds on top of the DIMM slots here. Make that a little bit brighter. So yeah, we have 8 DIMM slots total. 4 of them are occupied right now, so that tells me that there's 4 gigabyte RAM sticks installed. It'd be kind of fun to upgrade this to maybe 32 gigs, but I'll probably keep it to 16 right now. I think 32 gigabytes of DDR3 for a budget gaming system is a little bit excessive. But novelty nonetheless. So here's our 600 watt 80 plus gold certified power supply. So it's really convenient that we don't need to swap out the power supply in this, so that keeps the cost down. There's lots of room for 3.5 inch hard drives here. There's 1, 2, 3. Missing one hard drive caddy, but that's alright. I don't think I'll actually be putting 3 full-size hard drives in this. I'll be putting maximum 1 and 2 solid-state drives, so that's okay. There's this interesting little plastic shroud here that I would assume holds in place different PCIe cards, including the graphics card. I know the graphics card also fastens into this piece here, and it did originally have a NVIDIA Quadro 4000 2GB GDDR5 graphics card, which I took out, cleaned, and listed for sale for about maybe $40-$30 Canadian. There's a network card right here. I'll probably just leave that in because I don't have any use for taking it out, and maybe somebody who's using this can use it for something, and that's cool with me. I might actually take this whole plastic piece out, but we'll see how it goes. So flip this thing down, and I'm going to get to removing the CPU fan and heatsink first. Alright, so first thing I want to do is just take this thing out completely. Just to get it out of the way, and it's just held on by a couple little latches here. I can get it out pretty easily, I think. Okay, that was aided by this little tool that I got from my iFixit kit, iFixit.com. Not a sponsor, but sells excellent products. Okay, so to take this out, use a Phillips head screwdriver. Alright, so it looks like this CPU could take a little bit of love. I've got some, I'll clean it off, but I've got some of this Corsair thermal paste I'll put on, or a different brand if I run out. So just be aware that you will have to put some pressure down if you're using a Phillips head screwdriver. You don't want to strip the screws, that'll be bad. However, if you do, you could always use something like vice grips to remove the screws, but that seems like a worst case scenario. So let's see, it looks like we depress this lever here first. I'm gonna get this heatsink out of the way. Put this one down, and then this one over here. Okay, pull this up. Which way does this come up? There we go. There's our big old Xeon CPU. Look at that. Nice size. This cool looking 4-core 8-thread CPU is gonna probably give us some pretty good performance. Alright, I'm gonna grab some isopropyl alcohol and a couple wipes. Let's get to cleaning this. One thing I learned over time is to use some tissue paper to remove the old thermal paste. Mainly because if you look at my microfiber cloth rags, they're all stained with thermal paste, and that's okay, but I mean, if I can avoid it, that's even better. So definitely lucked out. All I did was blow the dust out of this tower, and the fan is actually pretty clean. There's no moisture buildup in the heatsink, like the really sticky dust. Sometimes I'll find that with some items that I refurbish, and that's always a bummer. But in this case, we're good. All this took was a nice blowout with my air compressor. So let's put this shiny little CPU, big CPU, back in. Make sure you line up the CPU in the correct area, following the arrow, which is up here this time. Usually I like to put a big X. I don't know if that's the best way to make sure there's little air gaps, but I don't know. Let me know what you do. Alright, so I'm probably going to edit out the fan talk that I just did, but it turns out that you can actually put the fan in this orientation, which is traditional to a lot of PC building I've done. Do take note, take a look at the fan, because we can see here that the arrows indicate that the air is being blown this way, not this way. So you would have to flip this fan around, which I was going to do, but I'm just going to keep this in the default configuration and run the thermal test with hardware monitor and see if it's fine. I mean, it's shipped this way. I would have to assume that it was meant to have warm air be directed up this way, and I suppose sucked out that way with the exhaust fan, or into the power supply and out the exhaust of the power supply. So whatever, let's just install it as it was and see how it goes. Okay, so I'm going to install the GTX 970 in the top PCIe lane right here. That is definitely the best fit. Alright, so on this particular version of the GTX 970, we have a 4-pin row here and a 3-pin row female. And as you can see from the power supply in the S30, we have 2 3-row PCIe plugs. So it'll of course work for one. So we'll get this one plugged in. We'll talk about the adapters here that I have. Alright, let's get this one plugged in. Okay, and oh, my mistake. Yeah, right. Okay, so I actually conveniently have this adapter here, which came with some other graphics card. I have no idea, but so it's taking 2 3-pin PCIe plug adapters and adapting it to a 4-pin, one single 4-pin. So we have our bases covered for that. So I'm going to put these 2 plugs in. Of course, that leaves the other 3-row pin here unoccupied. We can't have that. So to remedy this, I also have this SATA to 3-row PCIe adapter. So keep that in mind. If you still have the optical drive installed up here, that will take up one SATA power connection, and this will take up one SATA power connection from the power supply, so you'll only be able to power 2 drives, unless you get a SATA Y power splitter, which I do have, but we'll see if I need to use that or not. So now, with some cable adaptions, we're good to go. So just to reiterate, we have this SATA power to PCIe 3-row, and this 3-row to 4-row PCIe adapter. Cool. So we got everything installed now, the graphics card. Oh, the solid state drive already has a copy of Windows 10. So I'm just gonna temporarily plug it in and power this thing on, and just make sure that it's working before I go ahead and install the second solid state drive and start some game testing and thermal testing as well. Okay, let's get this thing powered on. Alright, as we can see, we have the S30 booted up and all fans are spinning. The solid state drive is recognized. I'm going to change the boot order. So we have our 16 gigs of RAM. That's recognized as well, which is good. Yeah. I do notice that the fan speed on the CPU is quite low, and I'm a little bit worried about the heat that the CPU is no doubt going to generate, but maybe I'll take a look in BIOS here for a second. So I see something under fan control support with a custom table set, loading default or custom. Nothing seems to change. So maybe there's something that you have to load in via USB or something. I'm not really too sure. If I haven't fixed this, or well, modified it, and you're looking at me now, definitely let me know in a comment. But otherwise, hopefully I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm gonna exit out and get to Windows. Alright, so we have Windows 10 set up with all the necessary drivers installed and all that. And I pulled up a hardware monitor. And as we can see, yeah, the graphics card temperatures are normal, hovering around 43.4 degrees Celsius. Let's go up to the CPU temperatures are quite high, just idling at 73 degrees. The CPU fan it's moving air, but it's not moving it very fast. So I'm going to run the Heaven benchmark, and we'll see where our temps are after that. Alright, so the benchmark is done. The graphics card Temperature as presented here is 77 degrees Celsius, which is fine. Some pretty good results actually for the frames per second. So I'm going to quit this and let's take a look at hardware monitor. I can't quite tell if the CPU fan is increasing speed or not. A plus is that the system did not shut down. Alright, let's see. The temperatures are now idling lower than before, which is good. So, it's kind of hard to see, sorry. So we have the CPU temps. Okay, CPU temps right now are idling at 59 degrees Celsius right after the benchmark. It peaked at 78 degrees Celsius. I'm okay with that. I'm gonna continue to monitor. I don't know why the temperature was so high at first boot, because now it's down to 57, 56 degrees Celsius, and that's totally fine. Prior to this, before repasting and cleaning the CPU, I did take a screenshot, and it was actually idling at a lower temperature. Maybe it was just cooler in the room. I'm not really too sure. But right now it's idling at 54, 55. It is a little bit muggy in my room right now, in my shop, but it's definitely not as hot as it has been. So anyway, okay, GPU temperatures. They are looking completely normal, idling at 52.3, max of 80.2 degrees Celsius during the benchmark, but that's to be expected. The fans are working just fine on the graphics card. So yeah, I'm pretty happy. I'm gonna get to testing some games, and but first, I'll just film myself cleaning up the inside of the PC case. And honestly, if you're really into cable management, this might give you a little bit of anxiety and grief, but you know what? Once that completely black cover goes on, out of sight, out of mind. So anyways, I'm going to spend a moment just, I'm going to install the second solid state drive, my solid state drive for the games, and maybe I'll install a hard drive later. But anyways, I'll do a time lapse of me cleaning everything up here, and then I'll do some game testing. Alright, I just wanted to provide an update on temps here. Things have leveled out a little bit, and we're sitting at an idle 41 degrees Celsius for the CPU. And down for the GPU, the two numbers that we want to know the most, sitting at 39.1 degrees Celsius. Of course, this ramps up during benchmarks and gaming, but I haven't seen it go beyond reason. Nothing's overheating, and that's a good sign. So just wanted to update that this is not actually such a quite the heat box that, or hot box that I thought it might be. Alright, so I just finished up testing out the build, and I installed a 512 gigabyte King Fast solid state drive along with the 128 gigabyte Samsung Windows 10 boot drive. So I did a little bit of cable management, and it looks pretty good. I routed a couple SATA cables through some holes in the chassis, and I tied them together with a zip tie, as I just have the hard drive caddies here to work with. Yeah, it works really good. Works really well, I should say. And yeah, I'm gonna put the cover back on. Call this build complete after I wipe it down a little bit. So stay tuned for gaming tests and overview of the case and hardware. Thanks a lot for watching, and also let me know in a comment if you've done something similar. I'd love to hear about it. This is a showcase of a Lenovo ThinkStation S30 workstation PC. if you can get your hands on one of these, they will provide a solid foundation for a budget gaming system or workstation. Lots of room inside this hefty case with its own carrying handle. So as you can see, there's a optical drive and USB 2.0 and microphone and headphone in and out on the front I/O. This has an Intel Xeon E5-1620 CPU, 4-core, 8-thread at 3.6 GHz. Rivals some Intel i7 CPUs. I also have well, let's check out the rear I/O first. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times USB 2.0 serial port, RJ45 Ethernet port, 2 times USB 3.0 audio in and out. There's the rear I/O of the GTX 970, which features an HDMI port, 3 times display port, and a DVI port. There's a network card that came pre-installed. So yeah, it's the there's the 600 watt power supply AC bell. It came stock with the system, which is very handy because you don't have to replace it. It'll power the EVGA GTX 970 superclocked graphics card, 4GB GDDR5 that I have installed. So there's kind of a unique look here. There's 8 DIMM slots for RAM, and I currently have 16GB of DDR3 1600 MHz RAM installed. It has its own little fan shrouds and fans to keep it cool. An interesting CPU fan and heatsink combo. Yeah, there's a 128GB Samsung solid state drive as a boot drive for Windows, and a 512GB KingFast solid state drive. There's all sorts of neat things in this case, like a diagnostic LED. Yeah, check out my other video detailing how I upgraded it for more information. So here's a example of Back 4 Blood, and I put VSync on while playing this game just to see what it would look like. You can turn it off too if you're looking for those higher frame rates, which you can get. It was performing around 80, 85, 90 frames per second on average, with a slight adjustment of graphics settings. And I just kept the frames per second. I kept VSync on because of the monitor I was using. Here's an example of Dead by Daylight, and it's on ultra graphics settings, and VSync is natively active in the game. I believe there is a way to turn it off, but I don't feel I really need to. Here's an example of Lawnmower Simulator, which is a surprisingly demanding game. It's still totally playable, but I was pretty surprised that it's kind of graphically intense. And as much as I played, this is, you're cutting lawns. And there's Skater XL. No problem playing this game. And here's an example of Stray, the new game where you play as a cat. and here's the Shadow of the Tomb Raider benchmark. And I activated VSync on this benchmark just because this is a much more graphically intense game, and although it will run perfectly well with this CPU and GPU combo, I don't believe that you need to have VSync deactivated to achieve some higher frame rates without adjusting the graphics and making them lower. Rise of the Tomb Raider, of course, will offer very good results. And Tomb Raider 2012 will of course run with no issues whatsoever, with a very high frame rate. And we have the Unigine Heaven benchmark coming up shortly, which offers some really good results on high 1080p graphics settings, so hopefully this gives you an idea of what you can run with this Intel Xeon CPU mixed with a GTX 970 4GB graphics card in 2022 and onward. Let me know if you have a similar setup and how it's working for you. Also, what you thought of this video. Was it good? Did I miss a lot? Did I cover a lot? Let me know and we can discuss it in the comments, and check out my tutorial video showing how I did this.